through direct or indirect rule. The intention was always the same. The aim was to subjugate and dominate through the colonization of the mind. For instance, the French actively did this through a process of assimilation. The French had an underlying policy which allowed them to suffocate the cultures of the people under their rule. They implanted French political, economic, and cultural ideas. Through this process, the colonized people were taught to aspire to become like the French people in order to obtain full French citizenship and therefore full humanity. In other words, they equated French citizenship to humanity. Now, on the other hand, although the British did not call their system assimilation, their approach was not really different from what the French did. I'll give you an example from Nigeria. In Nigeria, Lugard perfected a system which allowed external military and tax control to be operated by the British, while other aspects of rule were supposed to be left to local people and traditional rulers, who were then either coerced or forced into becoming puppets who served the interests of Britain. Lugard perfected a system which allowed external military and tax control to be operated by the British, while other aspects of rule were supposed to be left to local people and traditional rulers, who were then either coerced or forced into becoming puppets who served the interests of Britain. Another way through which the British colonized the minds of the countries that they ruled was through the imposition of the British educational system and the use of the English language. The British deliberately created a class system which was based on people's ability to ape, to imitate them. In other words, how well a person was able to speak the king or queen's English determined how civilized the person was. Imagine how much time our forefathers spent learning to act and sound British just so that they could be considered enlightened people. Meanwhile, this was done at the expense of their own oral and other cultural forms of education. I hope this proves that as Africans and people of African descent, we owe it to ourselves to actively engaging in challenging biased histories about Africa. We must continue to conduct our own research and share them widely in the most accessible formats. So if Africa is to make any significant stride towards any major form of development, our history cannot remain exclusively within academic circles. Our children must be taught, people who do not have access to academic publications must know their history. And this is because, as Sheikh Anta Diop points out, even a superficial examination of the cultural situation of Africa challenges us to question the predominant history being pushed forward by the Western world. Because if we're to believe their account, their history, then we have to first believe that Africans have never been responsible for any contribution to the world. Not even the civilizations of empires like Ghana, Mali, Songhai, Ife, Nok, Zimbabwe, the Congo, to mention just a few. If we continue to allow ourselves the falsehood that Africans had no part in civilizing the world, it means we will then continue to depend on the so-called developed world for the solutions to all our problems. Now, this has become increasingly important when we look at the ascendance of blatantly racist regimes like the Trump presidency in the US, Putin's apparent neo-colonial aspirations, and the daily increase in the popularity of ultra-right politics in most parts of Europe. Again, we need to find ways to challenge China's aggressive economic colonization of Africa. If we do not know our own history, how do we equip ourselves and future generations if all we know about our past is a history which focuses only on internecine wars, transatlantic slavery, and colonization? As the Igbo proverb made popular by Chinua Achebe puts it, a man who does not know where the rain began to beat him cannot say where he dried his body. I'd like to expand this proverb by saying men and women who do not know when and how the rain began to beat them cannot know how to dry themselves. Please, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you have not already done so. Also, like and share our videos. Thank you once again for joining me on this journey.